Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, Yevamos Kuf Chaf. We are holding at the fifth line from the top of the Amud. Yesterday, we had Shitas Rabbi Elazar, who says that, a tzara can be trusted with respect to the status of her fellow tzaros. You have two wives of the same family. One tzara speaking about the husband dying, that can benefit her contemporary, the other wife as well. But we had two ways of understanding Rabbi Elazar's shita. Is it that a tzara is to be trusted straight out, or only in a case where she's indicating by way of her own actions that indeed her testimony, her story is true? For instance, she says husband died and she personally goes and remarries. That tells us something about what she's saying that lends credibility to the story. Why would she ruin her life if it wasn't a true story, if it wasn't in fact? So two ways of looking at Rabbi Elazar, and we're trying to determine which way, what Rabbi Elazar had in mind. Now, what is the nafkamina? What's the difference between whether it's based on the ne'emanos of tzara, or it's based on the fact that she has proven by her own personal actions that in fact a story took place? The nafkamina would be when she's just testifying, but not actually acting on her testimony. So Rachel says, listen, our husband died, but Rachel herself has not yet remarried, which would indicate the truthfulness of her testimony. So do we require her remarriage before we can extend that heter to the tzara, or the very fact that she testified and she tells us about what happened, that is sufficient? Toshma, let's bring a raya. So back to the Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar, Omer Hoyel v'hutru li'avam and hutru l'chol adam. Mishnah speaks about Rachel, who was married to Reuven. Leah was married to Shimon. Reuven and Shimon were brothers. Rachel comes back. Reuven died. I need Yibum. Okay, she goes and marries Levi, the other brother. Leah likewise says, look, my husband passed away. Shimon died. Let me have some Yibum. She goes to Yehuda. Right? Now, Levi and Yehuda both themselves pass away. What happens to Rachel and Leah? Can they just go marry a stranger? Are they mutar l'shuk? Or perhaps not. They're held back because Rachel has to wait for Yibum. Yibum from whom? What do you mean? Shimon. Well, Shimon's mace. How do I know he's mace? Because Leah said so? Leah's not Neman. She's a Yevamos, right? When you have the wife of your husband's brother, that's called a Yevamos, and she's not Neman because, as we said, there's some underlying tension here, this perceived threat that she might join my family. So Yevamos is not Neman, pertaining to the other Yevamos status. So Rachel has to wait around for Shimon, her potential Yavam. She can't trust Leah's story. Leah, who claims that Shimon died, because Leah is not Neman with respect to Rachel's halacha. Likewise, Leah cannot remarry. What do you mean? There's nobody here to do Yibum to me. Sure, there is Reuven. Well, Reuven's mace. Who says? Rachel. She's not Neman for you. She's Neman for herself, but not for you. That's Shitas Tanakama, which we learned yesterday. Rabbi Elazar disagrees. Rabbi Elazar, Eimer, look, it's a paradox. You can't work like this. Once you say that Rachel goes and gets Yibum from Levi because Rachel's husband Reuven passed away, so you're relying on that fact. You've established that as a fact. The fact is that triggers, that enables Yibum. You've determined that Reuven apparently is no longer amongst the living. Likewise, Leah, when she went for Yibum to Yehuda, it's because you've established that her husband is no longer here. So once that's an established fact, that's it. We no longer revisit it. So now we've established that Reuven and Shimon are here no longer, in which case Rachel and Leah have nothing to wait for. And once you've established the fact that their husbands passed away with respect to them going and having Yivam, now, if their Yevamos pass away, they can just marry anybody. Rest assured, there's no more Reuven, no more Shimon around. End quote. Now, it would sound from the Mishnah that Rabbi Lezer's rationale is based on this idea that, the fact that Rachel went and did Yivam, that's the biggest indicator that her husband passed away. Why would she ruin her own life? If it's good enough for her, it's good enough for us. If you're telling me that the heter of Rabbi Lezer, the heter what? To trust the Yevama with respect to the other Yevama status is based on the fact that she wouldn't undermine her own status. Why would she remarry if it wasn't true? That explains the halacha in the Mishnah. So when Rachel actually does her Yivam, which is the biggest raya that her husband passed away, we likewise allow Leah to remarry. She went and did Yivam, and her Yivam passed away. That's it. We assume Reuven is no longer amongst the living because the fact is Rachel acted upon her testimony. She married the Yavam based on the fact that her husband is dead. So we've established it as fact. If it's been established for Rachel by way of her own actions, it becomes an established fact for all interested parties. But if the svara of Rabbi Lezer is that a tzara is ne'eman for her friend, forgavdli in siv nami, then this would apply even if Rachel herself did not act upon her edus. Why does Rabbi Lezer seems to insist that the halacha only applies when the woman acted upon her edus? Elashmam, this seems to be a raya. Tam the Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer's reason is because Mishum de Insif, because the Isha remarries, and that's the greatest raya that in fact her story is true. She wouldn't undermine her own status, and that proves her story as true. Is this a raya? Is this indeed true? That Rabbi Lezer would only go with the edus if she acts upon it? No, not so fast. Says the Gemara, perhaps Rabbi Lezer himself would personally hold that a tzara is trusted regardless, even if she doesn't actually act upon her edus. Rabbi Lezer lidivreim ka'amar lahu. He was just relating to the Rabbanan. He was speaking on their wavelength, so to speak. Lididi, according to me, my personal opinion is tzara midil chaverta. Tzara can be trusted for her chaverta. Va'afagavdolei insiv. And even if the tzara who was testifying didn't actually do anything, didn't do any concrete action to back up her testimony, min savinillah, we can allow the tzara to remarry. That's my personal opinion. But let's work with your mode of reasoning. Let's work with your shita. You, the Rabbanim, who hold that a tzara is not neman. Perhaps she's misleading her friend. At least you should concede to me the insiv, that if we have a situation where the Isha is actually acting upon her testimony, she's doing something to back up her story, she's remarrying herself, and then rest assured, you can be confident that her testimony indeed is true, and we can allow the tzara to rely on that testimony as well. Because why would she undermine her own status? Why would she ruin her life? That was Rabbi Lezer's argument to the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan, they responded, no, not always, not so fast. Sometimes hatred and animosity can actually be makalkalas ashur, lead a person so astray to the point that he'll be willing to sacrifice his own well-being to undermine the other person. Tamus nafshim plishtim huduka avda. Just like Shimshon Hagibar, at his last moment, he asked Hashem, let me topple this whole area, this whole stadium. I'm willing to die with the plishtim. That's how driven he was. Here as well, perhaps the Tzara is driven by her ill feelings, by her vendetta, that she's willing to undermine her own position in order to ruin her friends as well. Tashma, here comes another riot to our Shaila. Which way was Rabbi Lezer working? Was it just that a Tzara is Neman, or is it Dafka when she's going to prove that Edus by way of an action? An Isha left with her husband. She comes back, she says, look, my husband passed away. This is a standard classic case. We believe her, she remarries and collects her ksuva payments. But the heter applies only to herself. V'tzarasa asura, the tzara, the other wife in the family, is asur because you can't trust a tzara. Rabbi Lezer Omer, no, hoil v'hutra. Once Rachel becomes mutter based on her own testimony, hutra namitzarasa, the heter is expanded and extended over to the tzara as well. That's Rabbi Lezer. It seems the heter is based on the fact that Rachel actually is going to remarry. Sorry. Even before remarriage, hutra, the fact that she got a heter, even if she didn't even marry it, that's enough. So apparently you don't have to act upon your edus to be believed. Answers the Gemara. Ema will say, we'll learn differently. We'll interpret the Brisa, the Mishnah as follows. Hoil v'hutra v'nisis. Once Rachel becomes mutter and she carries it out, she acts upon it, she marries, now you know it's true. So perhaps only in that case would Rabbi Lezer believe her. Asks the Gemara, why aren't we concerned that perhaps Rachel actually has a get in her pocket? She got a divorce from this fellow. And that explains why she's going and remarrying, because she got divorced. This fellow is really still alive. Why is she claiming otherwise? Why is she saying he died? Look, perhaps she's trying to lead her tzara astray. So the fact that she remarries isn't necessarily a riot to anything. Maybe the fellow is alive and well, but he divorced Rachel. Answers the Gemara, true. If she married a Yisrael, you'll never know. Maybe she was a divorcee. We're speaking the instant L'Kohen. She married a Kohen. A Grusha is Asur L'Kohen. So the very fact that she married a Kohen is the biggest indicator that in fact her story is true, that Reuben passed away, and once we see Rachel acting upon her testimony, we could extend that heter to Leah, we could assume it as fact. So bottom line is, Rabbi Lezer says that Tzara is Ne'eman. We weren't sure what he meant. Plain Ne'emanus, so only because she acts upon it and that proves it as fact. We thought we had some rayas, which didn't really pan out. Continues the Mishnah. We're going to have many halachas regarding unfortunate cases of agunas. How do we identify a victim of an accident, etc., in order to be matir his wife? Says the Mishnah. So we find this victim, and we want to identify him. Ein mi'idin ela al parts of panim imachoidim. The only way to properly ascertain the identity of a victim is by having access to his facial features, his parts of panim, his cheekbones, his face, imachoidim, together with the nose, which is a prominent feature in one's face, which will allow you to confirm his true identity. Now, if you don't have access to that type of identification, even if you have simanim in his body, some signs that are distinct and point to this fellow, or you see some distinctness in his clothing which lend to his identity, that's not enough. That is not enough. The Gemara will go into these details. One can never come and testify that the fellow passed away if he didn't actually see him pass away. Even if he saw him badly wounded, cut up, that's not enough. Perhaps he miraculously survived. That's not enough to be matadish. Vitzolav, or nailed on some type of a tree or something, like she said sliva, like the yashka, whatever, some sort of severely wounded fellow. That's not enough. Or unfortunately, a fellow was attacked by an animal who's devouring him. That's not enough. You never know. He might have gotten away in the last minute. It's the only way to know this person is if it's within 3 days of his misa. But once it's past that time frame, you never know. The person could have been disfigured and mistakenly identified as this and this person. Rabbi Yehuda Kessler, you can't set the limit at 3. It's not an exact number. It all depends on the circumstance, on the situation, on the weather, on the environment, the type of person. Loikal adam, not every type of person. Loikal amakim, or every locale. Loikal hashois, or even the just the weather out there. A shavin, it's not all equal and the same. Rashi says adam is shamein, will bloat quicker. It all depends on the warmth. If it's a warmer climate, and things change quicker, and likewise if it's a sunny moment as well. So you have to look at the various, the elements surrounding the circumstance and set your time limits accordingly. Tana Rabban, speaking about facial features, what is sufficient? Pedachas v'lei parts of panim. Let's say you notice the forehead, but you don't actually see the face itself. Parts of panim v'lei pedachas. Or in the reverse, a face without a proper view of the forehead. Ein mi'idin, that's not enough for testimony. Ad sheyushneim im achoitim, unless you see both together, face, forehead, with nose. Amar Abaye, Beitem Rav Kahana, some say Rav Kahana. My Kra, where do we find this requirement in the pasuk? Hakoras pneim on sabam, to verify a person's identity has to be the panim, and also hakora, another additional element of identity, which is referring to the forehead. Now, by the way, Tosfos on the top, very important Tosfos, he says that when we speak about the 3-day limit, that's only when all you have access to is one's face. But if the gufa is sholem, you have the body intact, at times you can be makir, the simonim, if you have proper recognition of the guf, that is very often enough. And then he writes here that this whole idea is dafka with simanim. If you have certain signs, birthmarks, all these types of simanim, but if you actually recognize the person, that's a whole different thing. He calls it tvias ayin, interesting concept. You recognize the person. It's not just that you're noticing certain simanim, certain elements, identifying elements. You're actually noticing the person himself, and you recognize him. That would be enough even after 3 days, unless his face was injured, in which case he's not recognizable. Okay, back to the Gemara. So what is considered proper identity? Access to one's face, access to one's nose and forehead. And we right from a pasuk. Because otherwise, even if one of these features are concealed and lacking, you can't really have a proper read of that person. As we see in the following story, Abba Bar Marta, who had another alias, to Abba Bar Menyumi, he would get around. Have a maske bei de Reish Galusa Zuzi, the family of the Reish Galusa, the head of the community. They had a chayv. He owed them money, and he wanted to get away from them. I see Kira. So what did he do? He took some wax, Davak b'Belaisa. He applied it to some rag, Davak ba'Puse, and used it to apply it to his forehead. So he concealed his forehead. And now he was able to make his getaway. Chalav Kamai, he walked right in front of them, and they didn't recognize him because of his concealed forehead. So we see that in order to identify a person, you have to see his face and his forehead and his nose. This mission says it needs to be a proper recognition. Just finding simonim on his guf and on his clothing, that's not enough. Says the Gemara, why not? Are you going to tell me this simonim lavdei, right? So the concept of a simon, a sign, to use a siman as a form of identity, that's not rooted in Dairaisa. It's not a Dairaisa concept. We all know that when we find an Aveda, we find a lost item, and there's a siman on it, which allows it to be claimed by its owner. You're mechuyev to return it. We learn from a pasuk, the Gemara Metziach of Zion speaks about it, from the Hasimla has simanim. So the whole shaila in the Gemara, whether it's actually minat Torah or perhaps not. It's only midrabanan. If it's midrabanan, so how do we return an item to an owner who claims it as his just because he sees simanim? So the Gemara says because everybody's happy with that system. When I lose something, I want it to be returned through simanim, and I'm perfectly fine with the system, established by the Chachamim, because as we said, because when I lose something, I want it to be returned to me through simanim. So I'm perfectly happy with returning the item to you by way of simanim, even though it isn't necessarily a 100% foolproof system. So that's if you work with simanim d'Rabbanan, right? So Aveda, we understand. Either it's Dairaisa or the Rabbanan, it works. A system was established. But if you hold Simanim is Lav Dairaisa, then Aveda, okay, but when it comes to an Ishes Ish, such as in our case, so we're going to see this in the case of a get, which involves Isuri Dairaisa, just a siman, a sign, is not sufficient to confirm identity. So when the Mishnah says, unless you actually recognize the person, you can't just rely on simanim to be matid eishes ish to confirm that this is the person's husband. That's because simanim is not rooted in Dairaisa. It's not a Dairaisa concept, really. But Amini, I have a kasha from a brisa. Matzoy kosher bekis. So this fellow was transporting a get, right, delivering a get to an isha, and he lost it midway. And a little while later, he discovers it amongst his possessions. He sees that it's tied to a kiss, a satchel, barnaki, his wallet, a betabas, his ring. He finds it amongst his clothing. Afilu lizman meruba. Even if it's a while later, kosher, it's fine. Why? Because the fact that it's connected to his personal item, that's an indication that it's really his. Otherwise, why would it be sitting in his wallet? Apparently we are soymech, we rely on a simon. He can't confirm that this is the get. The only indication that in fact this is the get that he lost is because it's tied together with his item. That's a simon. It's an external indicator. And we're going to be matir and eishes ish. We're going to validate this get based on a simon. Amar Abaye le'kasha. The answer is, it depends on which Tana we're going with. It's machlekes Tanaim how to treat simanim. Ha Rabbi Lezer ben Mahavai. That brisa is following Rabbi Lezer, who says that simanim is sufficient proof even minat Torah. Ha Rabbanan, our Mishnah, which indicates otherwise, is following Shitas Rabbanan. Where do we have this machlekes? Sanya. Listen to the brisa. Ein mi'idin el hashum. Back to the missing fellow. Her husband went missing. They discover this fellow, and they don't recognize him except for the fact that they noticed a shuma as a wart, some sort of birthmark. That's not enough to confirm identity. That is enough to confirm his identity. It appears that machlekes is based on this shaila. The Mar Savar Siman Derais. Rabbi Lezer considers a simon to be sufficient proof min ha-Torah. Umar Savar Siman Derabbanan. Chachamim hold it's only Derabbanan and not enough to be matid eishes ish. Amar Ravana. The Kuli Alma Siman Derais. Perhaps everybody subscribes to Simanim min ha-Torah. So what's machlekes by this word? It's a local question. It's a question of whether this type of wart, this same type of birthmark, perhaps can be found on another person who shares the same mazel, born at the same moment, under the same influence of the same stars. So perhaps he has the same birthmark. Fascinating. You can have the same birthmark as the other person born on that same mazel. So it's birth related. It's mazel related. That's the shaila. Is that true or not? Mar Sava Shuma Matsui ben Kiloi. Chachamim hold that perhaps the same identical shuma, this word, this mark, can be found on a person born with the same mazel. So this birthmark doesn't really indicate that this fellow is the fellow you're looking for. Maybe it's the other fellow, the corresponding fellow, and not really her husband. That's the Rabbanan. So you can't rely on it. Elazar disagrees with this idea. It's one of a kind. Don't worry about duplications. So you know it's this fellow. Amri. Another way to explain the machlekes. Again, we're speaking a local discussion regarding a wart. The question is whether a wart can actually become disfigured, can change its appearance after death. That's the shayla. Does that happen or not? Yes. It is likely that a wart will change colors, will change appearance, lachar misa. So now it looks one way. Really, during his lifetime it was totally different. Then you can't necessarily assume that it's the person you're looking for. Umar Savar Eina Suri Lishtanis Lachar Misa. Blazer disagrees. He says a wart is a wart. What you see now is what was there all the time, and if it looks like Reuven's wart, then you know it's Reuven. But all agree that Siman and Darais. The question is whether a Shuma provides Siman. There's another version of Rava. Amar Rava the Kuliyama Siman and Darabbanush. The opposite. Maybe Siman is not reliable in HaTorah. According to all Shittas. So what's the question regarding the wart? When we speak about Simanim Daraisa or not Daraisa, it's a standard Siman. But there is a high level Siman. Siman Muvak, an absolute Siman. A better type of Siman. So a lower level Siman, like identity tag, that's an exterior, that's an external component. That's a regular Siman. Maybe that's not Min HaTorah. But when you take a look at the person, wow, this is that person, look at that word. It's an absolute, direct way of identifying. That's a Siman Muvak. Kamifliki, that's the Shaila. Is that considered reliable Min HaTorah? So typically it's not. A Siman is not Min HaTorah. Perhaps this is a higher level Siman, which is to be relied on even Min HaTorah. That's the Machlekes Tanai. Mar Savar Siman Muvak. Rabbi Yehuda says a Shuma, that's an absolute Siman. No room for mistakes, and it can be matir even Eishesish. Umar Savar Lav Siman Muvak. Rabbanan disagree. No, it's not a Siman Muvak. It's not really considered an absolute Siman. So it's like any other Siman which is not reliable Min HaTorah. Asks the Gemara, 1 second. According to the first Lashon of Rava, the Amar Rava Siman and Daraisa, that a Siman is considered sufficiently reliable even Min HaTorah. So how does he explain our Mishnah? Haktani, the Mishnah says, Afal Bishiyesh Simanim Begufa Bekelev. The only way to identify a victim of an accident is by seeing the person, identifying his. But if you just see Siman in the Guf and the Kelev as some sort of sign, that's not true identity, and that's not more than a Siman. It doesn't work. What do you mean? I just thought you told me Siman in the Raisa can be Matir and Eishesish. Why isn't that enough in our case as well? Answers the Gemara. Because we're not really speaking about proper Simanim. Very flimsy Simanim. When the Mishnah says there's a Siman Begufay, it just means the Aruch V'Gutz. Yeah, we saw that fellow. Yeah, he was a tall fellow, just like your husband. Gutz, he's a short fellow. That doesn't say much. There are many 6 feet people out there, many tall people, many short people. What does that say about you? That's not a Siman. So certainly it doesn't work. When the Mishnah says a Siman in the Kelev in his clothing, you know why it doesn't work? Because maybe he lent it out. The Chashin and the Sheila, maybe he lent out his shirt. The fellow grabbed his jacket on the way into Dav, maybe he lent out his jacket. So the fellow wearing that person's jacket isn't necessarily the real owner. That doesn't say much about it. Asks the Gemara, 1 second. If there's a real concern of lending items, then I have another question for you. We know that when a person loses his donkey, he comes and claims it as his. How do you know? Give me a Siman. Well, wasn't it wearing this and this type of saddle? That's enough to determine ownership, as we learn in the Eilu Metzias Daf Chav Zayin. Chamar b'simoni ukav heikchem adrin. How can you return a chamar to its owner? By way of the simonim attributed to the ukav, to the saddle. Saddle isn't donkey. Maybe he lent his saddle to somebody else. True, it's Ruvain's saddle, but maybe not his donkey. If we're chayshish for she'ela, right? Answers the Gemara. Lo yishayli inshi uchva. People don't lend out saddles. You know why? The maskiv le'lechamra, it punctures it wounds the donkey. It has to be custom made, custom fit. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly. So that's not something you would lend out. So when he identifies the saddle as his, that's an indication that the donkey, in fact, is his as well. Asks the Gemara, well, you're telling me that people lend out items, so therefore wearing or carrying a certain item isn't necessarily any indication of ownership? So what about that brisa that we had earlier? This fellow was delivering a get. He misplaced it and discovered it amongst his belongings. Right? Motzoi kosher b'kis was tied to his satchel, arnaki, his wallet, abbas, his ring. So we know it's his. How do we know it's his? Why are we returning the get to him, assuming that the get tied to his item is his? Maybe it's not his. Why is it tied to his item? Because maybe he lent his item to somebody else, and that fellow tied a get to that item, and then it ended up back in this person's possession. And says the Gemara, those specific items are not usually loaned out. Very personal items. Tabas, when it comes to a personal ring with a signet, chayish l'ziyufi, nobody lends that out. For concern that the other fellow might forge his signature. Same thing with the kiss, the satchel of arnaki, his money bag, his wallet. That's not something you lend out. But nachshi inshi. Rashi says, people are very concerned about mazel and sorcery, like by Yosef, right? It says, why'd you take the goblet? Don't you know that we use it for nichush? So these personal items are never loaned out. V'loi mushli, and people don't lend it out. So if it's connected to this item, it's yours. Another teretz can be, when the Mishnah speaks about the simon on this mace, the simon found on the kli, right? We don't believe it. We don't use it as testimony, as a simon. The question was why? If simon is deraisa, why isn't that enough? So the Gemara went to a whole discussion about concerned about she'ela, of loaning and borrowing. No, even without that, perhaps the simon in the Mishnah is so flimsy. You know why? Because it's a generic simon. Kelev, the simon on this kelev, on his begadim, is speaking about something very generic. Bechivri v'sumki. It's a white shirt. It's a black shirt. It's a red shirt. That doesn't say much. How many people are walking around with these colored shirts? It's not a raya. There's nothing personal specific about it, and therefore it doesn't work. So bottom line is like this. The Mishnah says we can't rely on the simoni haguf, right? You have to actually see the person's his facial features, the parts of the chaitem, right? The Gemara says the parts of includes the forehead as well. That works. But some type of unreliable simanim, such as he's tall, he's short, that doesn't work. Unreliable simanim on the kelim, on the begadim, like it's black, it's white, it's red, that doesn't work. Right? What about more specific simanim? This type of style, this type of siman, this type of mark. So that depends on whether a deiraisa or rabban. If siman or deiraisa, that even a siman she'eni muvik, even not a really absolute siman works. That's when it comes to the simanim on the guf itself. But on the begadim, it's not going to work because he might have lent out his begadim. So somebody else was wearing his shirt. So it isn't necessarily a raya that the owner is wearing it. If you hold simanim is only reliable with the rabbanon, so if it's a siman on the guf itself, that only works if it's a siman muvak, if it's an absolute siman with not any room for doubt. And regarding the simanim on the kelim, that seems to be not a real reliable simon, and it's not something to go with. Okay, continues the Gemara. This mission speaks about this fellow who Nebuch was all wounded and cut and everything. That's not enough to go with. You never know. He may have recovered, and you can't be matir his wife. L'meimer de meguyed chayid, mean to say that a person in this type of state can recover, can survive? Or amini we have a kash. Adam eina metame shetesin nafshe. A dying person is not metame until he actually dies. Afilu meguyad, afilu goises, even if he's in a state of meguyad or he's hovering between life and death, he's not yet dead. Says the Gemara, Timuyid lo metame. True, he's not metame because he's still alive. He's still technically alive. Ha michila chayim, but it seems pretty clear that he's not slated for chayim. He's most certainly going to die. So why isn't that enough for Edus Isha to be matir his wife? Or Abaye is machlekes tanoim. Like Kasha, answer is Ha Rab Shimon ben Elazar, Ha Rabbanon. It's machlekes tanoim. The Sanya mi'iden ala maguyad ve'in mi'iden ala tzolov. According to Tanakam, a person who's in a meguyad state, he's so far gone, we can consider him as beyond recovery. His wife can have a heta to remarry. So although he's presently not yet dead, but he's not going to survive. A person's just solo, he's nailed into a tree, whatever. That's not enough for Edus. That's something a person can recover from. So according to Tanakama, a Maguyad had no chance of survival. Rabbi Shimon Elazar Eimer, Afal a Maguyad ein me'idin, even a Maguyad fellow, you never know. Lichvois means like to burn it. You can actually use some sort of burning method to heal up close up the wounds, and he can survive. You never know. A person can miraculously survive even the most desperate situations. And his sheet is reflected in our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, how can you say that our Mishnah is following this shita of Rab Shimon Elazar, that a miguyad has an excellent chance of survival? Look at the next part of the Mishnah later on in Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph. Masa ba'asya. There was an incident that took place in the area called Asya. This fellow was lowered into the sea for his underwater expedition. When it came time to bring him up, they only turned up only his foot turned up. Poor fellow was detached from his foot, and they never saw what happened to him. Now Rashi says, this was Mayim She'en Lahem Soif, right? An endless body of water, in which case you can never know what happened to this fellow. Perhaps he miraculously survived on the other side. So we don't consider it to be a Misa, as per the drowning. The question is, regarding the fact that his foot was severed, perhaps that is enough justification for the heter. So what do the Chachamim say? Depends how severe his injury was. If his foot was severed at a point which was above the knee, a person can't survive like that, and his wife can remarry. But it was below the knee, that's not enough for her to remarry. Bottom line is, this fellow was severely injured, his foot was severed, it's like a meguyad, and still, what does the Gemara say? She can remarry. And here we're going with Shittish Rabbi Elazar, the meguyad can remarry. As is the Gemara, there it's different. Shani Maya. It's very different. When the person was immersed in water, the marzumaka, that intensifies, exasperates the wound. In that case, his condition is deemed to be more serious than just a plain meguyad, a wounded fellow on land. Asks the Gemara, so you mean that a meguyad can survive? I personally noticed, I would tire this Ishmaeli, the Shakal Safsiri took a sword, and he cut up his camel, and it didn't get a chance to even conclude L'Naruse, it's moaning, meaning it died right away. So we see that this severe wound takes its life. So we see that Meguyad does not survive. And it was a weakened camel, it didn't have proper koyach, and therefore it succumbed easily, quicker than the norm. Rava Amar besakan mulubenes of divrei hakol. Oh, Rava says like this. Back to the first kasha. In our Mishnah we learned that a meguyod chaye can still live. And then we have the other brisa which seems to indicate that no, a meguyod is not going to survive. Says Rava. Perhaps we're going that typically a meguyod cannot survive, except under very unique circumstances where you can hope and pray that perhaps his wound was addressed in a timely fashion, such as besaken milubenes. He was cut with a very hot knife, a sakan that had libun, became white, meaning it was so heated up, red, became white. At that point, when it cuts, it actually glues together the opening so quickly that the person can actually get healed. And it's v'divrei hakol, therefore can be following all shittas. Even though typically a meguyed cannot survive, but under these circumstances, there's a good chance of survival. So Mishnah says, in order to be made that a person passed away, it has to be an absolute testimony. But if a person was attacked by an animal and the chay is a chelas, that's not enough. That's only in makom she'ein nafshe yoytze. If the animal is pecking at an area in the body which isn't really connected to his vital organs. But otherwise, if it's connected to the makom hanefesh, then he's critically wounded, me'idin, you can go ahead and may it that he died. If a person's two simonim, the kan and the veshet, the esophagus and the trachea, the two simonim were nishchat or roiv of the shnaim, ubarach, and then the victim escaped. Me'idin. The fact that he incurred such a serious wound is sufficient to be made on his death. Eini, is that so? That this type of wound is considered serious enough, which gives us no chance of survival. A person who experienced this type of wound, and he turned to the side and he hinted, he motioned to the people around him, Kisvu get liishti, quickly write a get for my wife. I want her to be divorced without any need for yibum. They can go ahead and write it and give it to her. Apparently he's still considered alive, even though he was nishchat. Answers the Gemara, yeah, chayu. Presently he's alive, but v'seifei lamas, very soon after he's going to die. If that's the case, says the Gemara, that shchita on a person is considered like killing him, if a person does so b'shaking, right? He's holding a knife and it drops on a person, chas v'shalom, it causes this type of serious wound. We know that if a person kills b'shaking, he goes the golus, he goes into exile. He has to run to the specific cities there, right? Get away from the goyel hada. So this halacha, Taisus points out, is dafka when he died immediately. It has to be a direct cause of the ma'isa. So if this type of ma'isa shchita generates immediate death, then if it was done inadvertently, he should be required to go legolus. Alamatani, why do we learn that it's not so shachat by shnaim or rev shnaim? There's no golus in this case. Answers the Gemara. That's because of a different reason. We have a pshat on that halacha. Amar Rav Yosha, chayshin shema ruach bilbaltei. We're concerned perhaps the ruach blowing around that exasperated the victim's condition. So although certainly the perpetrator did it, but since it didn't have an immediate effect on him, it didn't kill him right away. That's a halacha by Golas. Taisus brings a pasuk. It says vayapel vayoma. It has to be an immediate misa. Here, since there was another factor involved which expedited the misa, then the perpetrator doesn't go to Golas. That's one pshat. The ruach came along and did that. Inami, another reason would be shemaiu. Perhaps the victim himself, by the fact that he was moving around his throws, kirav misasai, that expedited his misa, and therefore the other fellow doesn't have golas. Might be nice. What would be the difference between the ruach or the iur kirav misasai? What's the difference? When one element is present, not the other. For instance, the shachti bebisa the shisha. He did a shchita in a baisa the shisha, in a room proof. A windproof room. Ba'isa the shisha, made of marble, so it's totally insulated. There's no ruach, so that factor is not a factor, but the other factor is upirchas, and he jumped around, so that perhaps expedited his misa, but there was no ruach. Inami, another case would be the shachti b'bara, he shachted outside, so we had the ruach v'lei pirchas, but he didn't actually do any movements, so that we don't have the movement act, but we have the ruach that perhaps expedited the misa, in which case he's parted from galus. Okay, so what did we learn today? We started with Rabbi Lazar, Atzara is Neman. The question was what the pshat in that is. We had the Mishnah, which pretty much outlines for us the general halachas of general requirements, the guidelines to follow in terms of identifying a victim in order to be matir his wife for remarriage. So we have to actually recognize the person. You have to see the parts of the padachas, the forehead, the chaytim. Simonim on the guf and on the begadim is not enough, especially if it's just a question of how tall or short he was, what color begadim he had. What about better simonim than that? So if it's simonim deiraisas, even a simon she'eni muvik is enough on the guf. But on the begadim, well, we say, well, even if it looks like his, maybe he loaned it out, so it's not a right that he's really the owner of that beged. And certainly if simonim is the rabbanon, in that case, the simon haguf is only going to work if it's a true simon muvak, but the simon and kelim are not really going to help much. In the case of a meguya, the person who's severely wounded, we have a machlekes tanaim. If there's water involved, the water exasperates it. If this, we're talking about somebody who was weak to begin with, kachush, that is also concerned, that would indicate immediate death. And we have an exception to all of this, which is a sakin meluban. If it's a super hot knife, this utensil could actually serve to his benefit and heal his wound, in which case there's no indication of impending death. If there's chaya chlasai, but if it's mocking from the nefesh, then we know he's pretty much going to be dying. And when he was nishchat beis simonim, it's considered like misa, although he's not yet meis, in fact, and give a get, but it's going to happen soon enough. However, regarding golus, we say he's potter from golus. One of two reasons: either the ruach or his own pirchas were makarav misas, in which case exempt from golus. B'suras Torah to all of us and all of Klal Yisrael, and much hatzlacha.